Hi, everybody. All right, so week one is down. Our rosters are no longer being jumbled, they are set, and we are officially moving into week two. And if you remember last week, week one had a little bit of course readiness, but it also started to move us into our actual lessons for our semester. This week, two, we move full steam ahead now. No more course readiness. Now we are just heads down and we're getting to work. All right, now just a quick note if you found yourself a little bit behind in week one, because I know sometimes that acclimation is kind of heavy, or maybe you were having some tech difficulties with some software or something like that. You're okay, it was just week one, but we do want to make sure that we get that done so that you can move forward seamlessly. Now, just for future reference, anybody who ever finds themselves maybe a little bit behind or they didn't quite get a week done, always remember to move chronologically through our class. That means do not try to skip ahead until you've already finished what happened before, right? If you, for example, skipped all of week one and just tried to jump into week two, you're going to be a bit lost. You're going to be experiencing some weird tech stuff that maybe you haven't worked out yet. And just overall, it might feel a bit overwhelming when it wasn't intended to be. So always remember, whether it's week one or week seven, finish the week before you move forward. All right. So always finish what you start, basically. Okay. So that being said, if you are somebody who got week one finished and you are sitting there waiting to move ahead into week two, don't wait. If the folders are available to you, that means it's intended for you to keep moving. All right. So week two is there for you. Jump in and keep it going. All right, well, I have my little list here to make sure I don't get off topic. So I do have a few other kind of logistic Blackboard things that I do want to talk to you guys about very briefly. So the first thing is a few questions that I always get that first week of class. And instead of writing the exact same answer to the few students that write it, I just want to make sure I share the question and the answer class wide because more likely than not, someone else has that question. They just maybe didn't write it. All right, so the first question up is always about respondus and lockdown. So, a few things everyone needs to make sure they know. It's noted in the syllabus, it's noted in the campus syllabus, plus I am saying it here out loud to you so there is no confusion. Yes, respondus and lockdown absolutely is required for our course. An iPad is not allowed. So you must have an actual device, like a computer device, where you can download respondus and that lockdown browser. Phones will not work, iPads will not work. If for some reason you do not have a device that allows you to use respondus and lockdown as it is intended to be used, then you always have our computer labs at school, like on campus, or you can always let me know and we can make sure you can get to testing services and use their computers if you're worried about that. The point is you're not going to be able to get around it. All right, respondus and lockdown is absolutely required. It's required for pretty much almost every single common core class on the campus. So any writing class is no different. All right, now that being said, if you are experiencing respondus lockdown issues, if at any point in our semester together it's been working and then all of a sudden it's not, let me know. It might be on my end. Maybe I missed a box or an update happened in the night and it changed some of our configurations. But if you are experiencing a widespread outage, meaning you can't access any respondus or lockdown, that's likely a device issue. All right, so if you are ever experiencing a device issue, whether that's now or in the future, remember the UACCM Help Center is your go to. I would love to be able to troubleshoot everyone's devices, but that's kind of impossible through a screen like this. But also, it's probably above my capacity with computers, right? I'm not IT. Okay, so make sure you're going to the UACCM Help Center. You can find all of their contact information on the UACCM website. Just search Help Center and it will pop up. All right. The next question I want to make sure to answer is kind of that all relative due dates. All right. So, if you're struggling to identify due dates, remember due dates are available in three different places and they will never change unless I specifically communicate to you, hey guys, we lost internet and we've had to move a date, right? I absolutely will never move them up, meaning you'll never have less time than I've originally published. All right, so you can find due dates in three different spots. The first one is in the gradebook. If the assignment is already showing in your gradebook, there's also going to be a due date listed with it in your gradebook. You also can find that due date in the course calendar. So in our Blackboard course, there is a tab labeled calendar. If you click that, it's going to show you all of the due dates that are already published for you. And of course, once that assignment's available to you, you can always see the due date on the assignment itself. Now, where a lot of confusion happens with due dates, and that's not just this class, it's kind of a Blackboard thing with students. Students oftentimes rely only on the notifications that Blackboard gives them or that kind of timeline that students see when they sign into Blackboard. Understand first off, your instructors have no control over how that appears to you or what notifications get sent or when they get sent. That is an automated Blackboard situation. You personally can control your notification settings, but you would have to go into your account and set those up. Otherwise, they're set to a Blackboard default, which myself, or like I said, any instructor, we don't get to see that and we have no control over your account. So, that being said, those notifications and that timeline that you see, it is not how Blackboard is intended to be used. Blackboard is meant to be a classroom setting, hence our online classroom folder, right? It is a classroom, not an assistant. So if you are waiting for notifications to come through, or if you are just trying to use that timeline where something says something's due soon, that kind of thing, you are going to miss almost all of the coursework. That is because Blackboard does not operate in that fashion. Blackboard assumes you are going into the module, you're going into the folders in the online classroom, and you are completing them as intended, which again, it's a very chronological order for our classroom. If you are not doing that and you are only relying on Blackboard to tell you when something is due, you will forever be behind, you will miss due dates, and you'll simply be missing lesson material and announcements like this, right? Where it helps answer questions or clarify content. So, no shortcuts. Blackboard isn't friendly like that, right? Shortcuts don't work, especially in a writing class when you're not just having to submit an assignment and call it done. You're having to think, you're having to practice, you're having to look at feedback, you're having to apply feedback. It's a different beast. So make sure you are navigating Blackboard and using the online classroom as it's intended. All right. I think those are the two big questions. So I only have one more item, and that is just a little heads up with how the grade book is going to operate this semester in our classroom. I can't speak for other instructors, but I will tell you our classroom. So the grade book is very automated, if you will. There's three different kinds of scores that you're going to see in your grade book throughout our 8 weeks together. The first one is going to be a green check mark. The green check mark, all that means is you have participated. All right. The number that you see on a different assignment, maybe it's just points earned, that's going to be extra credit points. All right. And then the last kind of score that you'll see in your grade book is a percentage. So that's anything between 0% to 100%. And when you see a percentage, that means your answers or your writing earned that percent in relation to the challenge that you had to complete. Right now, it's very important you understand all three of those scorings make your overall grade. So for example, If you never do the participation activities, then that's going to negatively impact your overall grade. If you aren't showing skill development and you're not, showing accuracy in your work, that's going to impact those percentages, which obviously impacts your overall grade. If you never do any extra credit, well, that won't hurt you. But if you choose to do the extra credit, well, then that can benefit your overall grade, right? It's like a nice little bump or a nice little buffer in case maybe you struggled somewhere else. All right, now with that grade book, I purposely use one of the course readiness assignments, if you want to call it that, to kind of showcase how our grade book works. So this semester, I used the time management and deadline little quiz. It was only 4 questions, maybe 5. And the whole thing was just about kind of how much time do you need to be prepared to spend on our class each week. And how do you want to maybe pace yourself throughout the week for that time management element. Now, just a little side note, guys, I use it not just to do that and the grade book, it also shows me where people's reading skills are. I'll just go ahead and tell you, I think only one person in the entire class actually got all the questions correct. Now, it wasn't a crazy amount of questions, like I said, but for one person to get it correct, and they were just kind of some basic little math questions, right? Like, how many hours a week does this class take? Well, if we have to do 2 hours for every credit hour, that's 2 times 6. And we're a double paced class because we're 8 weeks instead of 16. That's 12 hours a week, right? If we split that up among 4 days a week, well, that's only 3 hours a day. But if we wait to do all 12 hours on the very last day of the week, well, then that means all 12 hours on that last day. Right? So if you are somebody who maybe didn't quite get the details, or you rushed through it, or maybe you were working out your tech and you click submit too soon versus next, that's okay. That's what that little assignment's meant to do. But there is some actual awareness that needed to go into that. So make sure you guys are slowing down. Make sure you are reading with purpose. Make sure you're using some critical thinking as you're reading as well. For example, if in that word problem, right, if you chose 6 hours for the entire week and yet you chose 12 hours that have to be done on Sunday, well, that just isn't logically correct, right? So double check yourselves, okay? Now, that's my aside. Let me get back on track here. You'll notice in your gradebook for that particular assignment, you have a green check mark. So remember, green check mark means you participated. So if you attempted it in any way, you got your green check mark. Now, what's more important with that one, because it was a participation practice or a participation assignment, whatever you want to call that, everyone will also have, I believe it's purple. There should be a purple little comment box next to that assignment in your gradebook. That is where I have provided you with custom feedback. Now, your feedback on this particular one isn't anything amazing. It either says, good job, you got them all correct, or for the majority of you, it says which questions you got incorrect, right? There's nothing in depth there. It's more about you getting into your gradebook and you seeing that even if there's a check mark, or maybe in the future, even if there's 100% listed there, if there is a comment box, you've got to get in the habit of reading that, because in a writing class or a communication class of any kind, feedback is how you grow. Feedback is how you keep moving forward. So you don't want to miss that. You want to get in the habit early now of always looking for that comment box. Okay, guys, I think that's it. Week 2, we're still very early, but like I said, we are moving full steam ahead. With week 2, you absolutely are getting into kind of the meat of your first major challenges or major projects. So yeah, keep it going. If you do have questions, obviously message me. If it's a question I think the whole class needs to know, I might answer it this way instead of a one-on-one, but I will always answer your questions. All right, guys, keep it up, and I'll be watching for more of your work. Bye.